Today's video is on midpoint of a segment. What I would first like you to do, even though I know you just started this video, is actually go back on my website and find the video for midpoint construction. This is Mr. Bass doing the video, and I'd like you to draw what he's drawing right here on your note sheet. Then when you're done, come back to this video. Thank you. Okay, well, welcome back. Hopefully you realize that the midpoint of a segment is a point that divides the segment into two congruent segments. If you didn't already watch the video on between and congruent, you'll know that congruent means equal. So a midpoint is a point that divides segments into two equal congruent segments. When we do a math problem involving a midpoint, you need to know that M is the midpoint. So if I ask you to find the length of VM, that's only from here to here, I only give you information of what VM is and MW. So the only thing we can do is set them equal if we know that M was a midpoint. Well, how do I know? Doesn't tell me in the directions that M is a midpoint, which sometimes it can, but here it gives me tick marks, and in geometry, those tick marks means that the length of VM is equal to MW. So algebraically, I can set 4x minus 1 equal to 3x plus 3. Take a second, solve for x. You should have got that x is 4. Please check back to the example. It says to find the length of VM, so I need to plug it back into 4x minus 1. So 4 times 4, 16, minus 1 is 15. Please pay attention to what the answer is looking for. I could look for VM, I could look for MW, I can also look for VW. So I would have to plug it back in here, get 15, and VW would be 30. For example 2, it's going to be a similar concept, except the problem is it's written out. So I tell you O is the midpoint of segment DG. The first thing I would do is draw myself a picture. So I draw segment DG, and I put O in the middle. How do I know O is in the middle? I let myself know by making little tick marks. They're a little big, but that's okay. Okay. So I make little tick marks. So now I know that O is a midpoint. The second thing I do is label my diagram. So DO it's there. Okay. DO is 3x minus 5. Sorry, I can't stand how big these are. So we have to make those tinier. We'll just make them like this. So this mark and this mark are congruent. So DO is equal to OG. And then I give you DG, which is the entire segment. So if I mathematically need to make an equation, I hope you realize that you cannot set DO equal to DG because DO is only half of DG. So I could use a half and say that 3x minus 5 equals half of 5x. But doing a half kind of makes math a little harder. So what I'm going to do is just take 2 times 3x minus 5 and set it equal to 5x. You could also take 3x minus 5 and put it here too, since they're the same. So if you're somebody who needs to write out the whole equation, do it. But remembering our operations, we multiply, so we get 6x minus 10 equals 5x. We get, if I bring this over, I have to bring the 6 over, it's negative 1 equals negative 10, and x is 10. That's great, that's x. In red right here it says find OG. So now that I copied it over, OG is very similar to DO, is exactly the same thing as DO. So I could plug it back into DO, which gives me 3 times 10 minus 5. So that's 30 minus 5, 25. So my final answer, forgot to type, is 25. Okay? I'd like you to pause the video, please, and try this on their own. Even though there's a fraction in here, there's a reason there's a 2 on the bottom of the fraction to make your life easier. So go ahead and at least try to draw your picture, set it up, and then if you're stuck, come back to the video. Okay, after trying it on your own, you should have drawn a video. You would realize that E is the midpoint. So 2 times DE will give me DL. I do my math. Please note when I multiply 2 times a fraction, it's 2 times 7, which is 14, divided by 2, or the 2's cancel. So it's 7x. Still need to distribute it to the 10, so it's 20, and then the rest you should be able to figure out. Once you get x, I ask you for EL, which if you drew a diagram, EL is the same as DE. And so I can plug it into here and I get 38, and then DL is 76. You can self-check yourself that if DL is the entire segment and this is half of the segment, 38 better be half of 76, and it is. The second concept with midpoint comes from coordinate grids. We talked about points and location. If I need to name a point on a coordinate grid, I have to give it an ordered pair. So for example, I'm going to say that E, if we remember, you move horizontally first. So E is over 1, negative, down 3, negative. So E is -1, -3. F is over 5 in the positive direction and up 7 in the positive direction. So F is 5, 7. Each ordered pair is x comma y, and so you have to be careful if you're labeling these pairs. Make sure you're putting x and y in the same pair, not x1, x2. Make sure you're doing x1, y1. And this ordered pair could be x2, y2. It would not matter if I reverse them or not. But the midpoint formula, so here I have a segment or a line, doesn't even matter, and I want to find what's the midpoint of these locations. So obviously I know it's somewhere around here. Well, there's a formula, and the formula simply states this. I'm going to take my x's and average them together. And an average means to take 2 numbers and divide by 2, or take more numbers and divide by the numbers you have. But if I only have 2 x's, I'm taking those 2 and dividing by 2. And to find the y coordinate, I take the y values, add them together, and divide by 2. So as long as you can label your points x1, y1, and x2, y2, you should be able to simply substitute into the formula. So if I look at just my x's, I'm going to take -1 plus 5, that's 4. I'm going to divide it by 2, and that's 2. For my y values, I'm going to take -3 up here plus 7, divide it by 2, so I get 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now please note, your final answer that we're looking for is an ordered pair, 2, 2. So the midpoint of this segment is at over 2, up 2. So the midpoint would be right here, and that should look about in the middle of those 2 points if I move that line. So I'd like you to take a second, try a midpoint problem on your own. You should be able to just label your points x1, y1. So if you label your points x1, y1, x2, y2, then all you need to do is plug it into the formula. So we have for our x's, 7 plus 9, 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. For our y's, -5 plus -1, watch your negatives, -6 divided by 2 is -3. And then please remember your final answer has to be a ordered pair. So final answer 8, -3. I want to go over example 4 with you, and then you have to be able to do it by yourself in the next problem. The problem with example 4 is that instead of me giving you x1, I give you x1, y1, which is coordinate A, but I don't give you B Instead, I give you a coordinate of the midpoint. So if you think about what the midpoint is, it says this, that I'm averaging my x's. Well, my x in this problem is here, 1, but I don't have the other x, x2. So I'm going to make an equation that's 1 plus x, and then the formula says to divide by 2, and I'm setting it equal to what my coordinate is, x value of my midpoint. So that's the equation. If you are stuck algebraically, the best thing we try to do is get rid of the 2 off the bottom so I can multiply it to both sides. When I multiply it to both sides, I crosses out here, and you get 6, because I multiply by 2, and then you still have 1 plus x. Solve, x is 5. That's only my x value. Now I need to do exactly the same thing with y values. So here's the endpoint, A. Here's the midpoint. So again, I'm going to set 2 plus y, here's my 2, plus the y value that I'm missing, divided by 2, equals the midpoint, 5. Solve. Get 2 off the bottom. I multiply by 2 on both sides. They cross out here. I get 10 on that side, equals 2 plus y, and y is 8. Your final answer of the other endpoint would be 5, 8. Please try this on your own first. Pause the video. Move it over. Pause the video. Try it on your own, and then come back and see if you did it right. I really hope you did pause the video and try it on your own and not just use right away without trying. So first thing is, I'm going to take my x value of my coordinate, which is -2, add it to the x value that I don't have, divide by 2, and set it equal to the midpoint. Algebraically, I'm not going to go over, I went over last time, and you should get that x is 4. Do exactly the same thing with your y values. So I take the 3 out of here, I set it plus y that I don't have, divide it by 2, I set it equal to 0. 0 is a point on a graph, 0, 0 is a point on a graph, negative, negative is a point on a graph, so you can get answers that are negatives, you can get answers that are fractions. They happen in math, okay? And my final answer would be 4, -3. If you're done, you can start working on a worksheet for midpoint. If not, you can go back and finish if you have other work from a different station. Thank you.